Now, this information will also be carried in KDDL4 mostly. I'm just giving you a little bit of on this, so you have a clue of when we talk about the seven Jehovian seals and the trumpet pulses and those kind of things that are coming through on the negative agenda side. There's a whole series of diagrams that are structured on this. This is an interesting diagram, and it's just meant to show the inorganic fall seal sets of the Panclara spectra, external chelantic, the 7 Thea seal sets of the Gonfal underworld matrix fatally, and the corresponding phantom fall matrix 7 Jehovian seal sets, the Arcturian 7 trumpets network of the Jehovian Dove APIN system. So this information in more detail will be covered in KDDL4, but it's showing you it's an interesting construct. This was quite the format, the graph base to put together, because here you have from December 9th of 2009, these are dates running all the way up to November of 2027. You'll also notice there's a dimensional scale here, where D1, D2, D3, it's actually D1, D1.5, D2, D2.5. So it's showing dimensional scale there. It's also showing dimensional scale here and the densities. So there's a lot going on in these diagrams, and they cross-reference. So it's showing you, first of all, where these seals are located. This would be J seal 1, J seal 2, J seal 3, J seal 4, 5, 6, and 7. These are the Jehovian seals. These are part of the Arcturian complex, which we'll get into. There's tons of information on these guys, too. Whose are these? Whose are those? The ones up here correspond with the organic Panclara 15-dimensional EM spectrum. There's 12 of the 15-dimensional shown. All right, going this way. And then from this line down here, these are the inorganic underworld Gonfal and phantom fall EM spectra. So this is showing you how these seal sets interface between the organic 15-dimensional spectra and the inorganic phantom and underworld Gonfal spectra, and how the J seals sit right on the line between them, and when they fire or open, they allow the fall seal sets that are implanted up in the organic system to interface with the sets that are implanted in the phantom fall and Gonfal systems. So there's a lot more to discuss on these diagrams. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're talking about. And this has to do with very specific black hole systems and all of that, some of which we have spoken about in the MCO Freedom Teaching series. But this is the basic diagram. And here is where we learn, once we see what these seals do, and that's where trumpets come in. And I will show you that briefly too. And again, these are not finished yet. They will be tweaked and fine-tuned before they're presented in KDDL4. But it shows you a timeline of what dimensional level of what is firing and when that's occurring. So that's very helpful to pull a timeline of understanding what is going when, what is firing when. This one was the D1 J seal, and it fired with the D1 trumpet, and that was in 11 of 2016. So that was what triggered the autoimmune responses that we're on now with the erotic awakening. This timeline goes all the way up to November of 2027, and very specific things happen within that period. So this shows you where the negative things are positioned. The next diagram will give you an idea of the trumpet pulses and why they're called trumpet pulses and when they're activating. And then the one after it, even though they're not complete diagrams, will give you an idea of what's called the chevron bursts. The chevron bursts are coming from the Early Conservatory and the FE consciousness field. They're organic, and they're the only thing that can override a trumpet pulse and break it up. A trumpet pulse is a very distorted time wave field that creates specific things that we'll go into more in KDDL4. But you don't have to be terrified of the fact that the trumpet pulses, yes, they have been started, but so have the chevron bursts that neutralize them. So we are in the middle of a much, or as opposed to an invisible Cold War, it's become an invisible hot war. And that's not a war on the planet right now. It's much higher. And that is what we are dealing with, but we will be okay with the guardians' information, what they're sharing with us. They are showing why, even in times when seemingly negative things are happening, we still do have the eternally positive context of existence. For if there is a problem, there always is a remedy in the eternal life paradigms. So this is what we'll learn about first, some of the remedies and where the frequencies are coming from for those remedies. Let me see the next one, please. So the next one is built on that same diagram. But this one will give you an idea of why they're called trumpet pulses. So again here, these are the J seals. And these were the Arcturian seal sets that go with them. This is a black hole. There's specific names to each of them, and I don't have them all memorized yet. But this was 11/20/15. This began. They began to open this, and that began triggering the activation of Trumpet Pulse 1, or J Seal 1, and that triggers Trumpet Pulse 1, which is this one. This one is, see, this diagram isn't quite finished yet. This part is actually in correction right now on the table. But each one of these represents a dimensional pulse. It's connecting a J seal to the other seals that run in front of it. And what it does is it takes the dimensional spectrum and force blends it with, unnaturally, with the next dimension up, the next dimension up. What it does is it forms literally a trumpet-shaped time wave distortion field, and progressively each seal will fire and create one of the trumpets, and each trumpet gets bigger and bigger until you get to the seventh seal, and then at that point it links a black hole system that's on the end of that we'll get into the specific 7KDDL4 with the one that started it here. And it's very, very specific data of how these things work up there and out there in the universal ethers. But this gives you an idea of why they're called trumpets, trumpet pulses, because they do look like a trumpet waveform. And again, here are the dates when each of these, they come out, they fire, and then they expand and hit their largest point, and where they hit their widest point, where the wave expands like the mouth of a trumpet, that is the point where they begin to reverse the corresponding dimensional shield. So there is remedy to this that are called the chevron bursts. Next one, please. And again, these aren't exactly the shapes yet. We've been playing with trying to get the shapes exactly right. But here are the trumpets that you saw on, the 7 trumpets that you saw on the diagram before. These would be the chevron bursts. And what they do is they actually break up. They interface. They fire at a certain time. And actually, the trumpets fire in November, between November 8th and 9th each year for 7 years. And the chevron bursts fire they start the following May, Hitharo, of the following year. So you have a November trumpet, then you have a May chevron, and then by the time the next November trumpet hits, that chevron, the first chevron that went, gets bigger, and it overrides and breaks up the trumpet pulse before it. So there's a whole sequence of activations that take place here, and this is why right now the Guardians are considering the Storms of the Century invisible war drama. It's still relatively invisible, but it is hot now because the trumpets and the chevrons are running in, and they will go from when this all started, actually in 2015, they opened that wormhole. But then November of 2016 is when Trumpet 1 fired and the progression started. So this will be going all the way up until the 7 trumpets are done in November of 2013. So we'll be progressively, they'll fire their trumpets, and we'll fire the chevron bursts that progressively clear the trumpets. So we're going to be having a little bit of a roller coaster in frequency in the planetary grids for the next 7 years. And there's an out-picture cycle where those events that are happening in the energetic forms also begin out-picturing cycles in the mass dramas. And we're already starting to see some of that, and we'll talk more about that when we get into the sections of KDDL3.